Welcome back to the BTS Happy Hour podcast. I'm your host, Andrea. Before we get started, I have an announcement. This is going to be the last episode before the podcast goes on hiatus. Depending on what's going on with BTS and what's going on with me, I would like to bring it back once Jin returns from the military or when they're all back in 2025. This will give me a chance to recharge creatively as well as catch up on BTS content. I want to thank you all for being listeners. I read something on Twitter once about how if you're a podcaster, if you think of downloads as people in the same room as you listening to your show, it feels like more than a stat. It feels more real. So I appreciate all of you. See you again soon. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. On to the episode. Speaking of announcements, we finally received an enlistment statement from Big Hit Music. They posted to Weverse on December 5th, and the message says, "We want to thank you for your continued support of BTS and would like to update you on Jin's upcoming enlistment into the military. Jin will fulfill his required time with the military by enlisting in the army." Okay, so I guess now we know which branch he chose. He didn't pick one of the other ones. It says, "Please note that we will not be holding any kind of official event on the day of his recruitment." And I think that's appropriate. I mean, it's just going to be the same thing that all the other males of Korea go through, and it makes sense that they wouldn't want to make it look like he's different than anybody else. He wants to just do it just like everyone else. And then it continues. "The entrance ceremony is a time to be observed by military personnel and their families only. In order to prevent any issues that might occur from crowding, we ask fans to please refrain from visiting the site. Instead, we ask you to keep your heartwarming words of support and farewell in your hearts." So I think that's good that they told fans that, even though, there'll be some that aren't going to listen or pay attention to common sense, and they might try to show up at his military base, and hopefully this is all kept under control, because we wouldn't want to make BTS look bad by fan behavior. Another part of this, it says, "We also advise you not to get adversely affected by purchasing unauthorized tours or product packages illegally using artist IP. Our company will take necessary action against any attempts at commercial activity making unauthorized use of such IP. We ask for your continued love and support for Jin until he finishes his military service and comes back. Our company will also strive to provide every support he needs during this time." So I guess they don't want fans to be fooled by media or merch that is going to play on your emotions, like, "Oh, here, I have something that Jin approved of right before he left," or it's secret footage of something. And of course, everybody should be aware that it wouldn't be official unless it's coming from HYBE. So let's remind everybody, because maybe I think they're worried there'll be some really upset fans, and then they'll be just desperate and buying, "Oh, I need to get this photo book of Jin," or whatever, and it's not an official product of theirs, so they can't guarantee the quality of that, and they don't want fans to get scammed out of their money. So I guess that was something that they wanted to include in this statement. I can see that it doesn't include the date, and of course that's going to be private information. Like they said, it's just for the family, so I'm glad they didn't include that. And clearly they know what the date is, and it's probably pretty soon, and we might not even know once it takes place. So I think that's best for everybody, for privacy. And hopefully it doesn't leak either, because that's something that could possibly happen if somebody hears about it that's involved with the military or at HYBE. Hopefully they don't have anyone leaking stuff like that. But sounds like it's just about time for Jin to go off to the military, and I wish him the best of luck. Hopefully he doesn't have a tough time and just, gains whatever you can from this experience. I'm sure it feels good to serve your country and at least be a part of something that all the other men of the country are a part of, and try to remember like your national pride and like what you're doing this for. So I think it'll be a good experience for him. And of course, as fans, I'll be waiting for when he comes back. Spotify Wrapped came out, and this was, I think, right on December 1st, or it might have been right at the end of November. And of course, my top artist, again, was BTS, number one. It said 1,983 minutes listened, and I'm in the top 2% of listeners, which I don't think that's that much. I've seen people with like top 0.0 whatever of listeners, so I think those are people that are listening to only BTS and nonstop. I don't do streaming for records. Like I'm only listening to it if I'm listening to it. I'm not trying to like, oh, we gotta get the streams up for this new songs that came out. I don't really do that. I don't think that's worth the effort for, an individual person. So it's just like what I'm actually listening to, and that was my top artist. And I don't only listen to BTS. I try to listen to other artists too. And I guess that comes with this new feature that they have in Spotify Wrapped where it says what kind of a music listener you are. And mine said I'm an early adopter. And it kind of seems like they're trying to do the same thing as the personality tests where they have like, oh, you're INFP or whatever. They're trying to do that at Spotify. And so that, oh, I'm this, and like, oh, what are you? Let's talk about that. And then, everybody will share their Spotify Wrapped. It really is a good like marketing tactic that they have come up with, because all day, and like for a couple of days, people were like, here's my Spotify Wrapped. And it's kind of funny because I know like you don't really care like what other people's are. Like, oh, well, that was your number 3 and that was your number 2. Like, I think when people post them, it's like you're just looking at, oh, do we have the same top artists or whatever. You're just looking for things you have in common. It's like, oh, okay, I approve of that. It's not like you actually care what other people are listening to, because it's completely individual what everybody likes. So I just think that's funny. And of course, here I am talking about it. But it said, yeah, I'm an early adopter. So the characteristics are exploration, newness, variety, commonality. And that is true, because I am always like at least giving new songs a chance. I'm like, you never know. This might be a great song and it just came out this week, so let me give it a chance. And I guess I do that a lot because I check out the, New Music Friday just in case there's anything that's decent. And there usually isn't, but I guess it's just the fact that, oh, you're that kind of a personality. You're like hoping for good new music. And the other thing I do a lot is I'm like constantly changing my playlist, like trying to make it like perfect and like just the right order. And is there another song that I can put here, or should I move this one up because it has to be in a certain order? So it's just very like, I'm like that kind of a person, like making lists and I probably spend more time editing playlists than playing the playlist. So I think that was very interesting to see in Spotify. And so BTS was my top artist. My other out of the top 5, Taylor Swift was number 2, and then Twice was 3, and then Kanye West was number 4. It just so happened earlier this year I was doing a re-listen of the early Kanye albums, because I was like, oh, I don't really remember like all of the, his big songs that he's known for. So I was like, let me just go back. And it's like, of course now it's like very different. If you talk about being a fan of Kanye, it's like, oh, he's like about to be canceled or is canceled, or who knows by the time you listen to this. So don't cancel me. I was doing this months ago. I was listening to the Graduation and like the other early Kanye albums just to like refresh my memory. And then my number 5 was Lizzo, which I'm not even sure why, because I don't remember listening to her that much. I just remember her new album. There was a couple of songs where I was like, oh, okay, this is not bad. I listened to them each a couple of times, but I don't know. I guess somehow that's in my top 5. And then my top songs, number 1 was Run BTS, and it says, date most listened, June 10th, 2022. It's like, wonder what happened around there. Of course, that's when Proof came out. So clearly I was like, oh, this song, this is it. This is awesome. So I had 47 total streams of Run BTS. I feel like I've listened to it more times than that, but I guess that's what Spotify says. Number 2 song was Would You Run by Tribe. I guess that's how you pronounce it. That one girl group. I guess they're new. But that one song is really good, and I think it was on like several playlists that I play, so I'm not that surprised to see that there. I'm surprised that it's all the way number 2, but I guess I just played it a lot. And then 3 was Yet to Come, and 4 was For Youths, which totally makes sense because I was listening to Proof a lot, and in particular all of the new songs that were on Proof. So I'm glad to see that made it onto here. And my number 5 was Killing Me by Chungha. I don't know if that was one of my like favorite songs, but I definitely had it on several playlists and it got played a lot. So that was my Spotify Wrapped, and it said minutes listened 52,672. So that seems like a lot of minutes. And then it says that's more than 90% of other listeners in the US. And if you're curious about Morgan's Spotify Wrapped, his top artists were 1 Twice, number 2 BTS, 3 Katy Perry, 4 Blackpink, 5 Taylor Swift. And yeah, I did have a lot of Taylor Swift. She was my number 2, and that's because she had just so many albums coming out. So I was listening to a lot of her music lately. So unfortunately, RM's new album Indigo was released in December, so I don't think it was factored into anything for this year's Spotify Wrapped. So hopefully they collect the data on that and it gets rolled into next year's stats, because I've definitely been listening to that this past week. And RM's been doing some promotion. I had seen on Twitter there's a concert in Korea in a small venue where he performed for an hour and for like, I don't know, I think 200 guests in the audience. And all of the audience received very unique gifts, and it was also a no phones type of concert. So I don't think there's any like footage out there, unfortunately, but I'm sure that was pretty awesome to see him perform and like see him up close in like a small stage. So very lucky people who got to see that. And he's done a lot of interviews, especially with magazines. I read some articles like from Variety and Vogue, and he also appeared recently on some other variety shows that I haven't watched yet, but he was also on Suga's new show, and I'm not even sure of the reason for this show, like Suga's new talk show, but I think it is a great idea for content. And it's like a very similar concept to that YouTube show that Jin was on. I forget what the title of that was, but the Young Jin show, in which there is a guest that Suga interviews and then they drink alcohol together. And in the first episode, RM was the guest. And so that made sense because, of course, he has his solo album to promote, and that's the timing of when that episode was going to come out. So, so Suga's drinking talk show is what I was calling it, but I think it's called Suchwita, and it's like play on his song Dashwita. So, RM was a guest. He brought traditional alcohol and Taiwanese whiskey. It sounded like when you say traditional alcohol, that to me means it's not going to taste that good. It's going to be like strong or like really like harsh. So, but these are guys drinking, so it's going to be like hard liquor on this show. So, they were there and he talked about putting together his solo album Indigo, and he said that RM was the first to listen to Jack in the Box before it got released by J-Hope, and so that's why he let J-Hope listen to all of Indigo before he released that. So to get, his take on it. So I thought that was a cool fact there. His new album is a diary of 2019 to 2022, and he's been talking about how it's a chronicle of the end of his 20s. And, these two, RM and Suga, they have a lot to talk about in terms of songwriting and, the techniques they use and their process for that. So I think that was some good conversation there. And I didn't know this, but I guess RM has regrets about Mono. Like maybe he didn't like some of the songs later on, or he would have done things differently. But once you have an album that's out there, you just can't do much to change it. It's as published. And mono means one color, and so I think he's trying to have a theme here of album titles. So that's why he calls this one Indigo, because that's adding a color. That's like a color that is kind of a natural color, but it's also, something that can be created, and it's a very like low saturation color. And he mentioned how Adele has her numbers theme, like she has her age as the name of her albums. If you remember, she named her albums 19, 21, 25, and 30. So I think he thought like that was a cool idea when they have like a theme for your albums. Which I think that's kind of cool, but then sometimes I think like, what if you want to name it something else? Like your third album, you have a cool word in mind or a phrase, and it's like, oh, I can't use that because I already started this thing with the colors. So I wonder if that's going to happen, but I guess we'll see, because RM said he's already working on the next album, and he's going to try to have that available. Like, I think he said once he's already enlisted, that like the timing of it might be like by the time he's there already, and then it comes out like while he's away. So sounds like he's got some stuff going already. And he said that Indigo, it has a variety of genres. It's not just, all rap or all singing or whatever. It's not, one type of an album. Like, how Drake's album, not the most recent one, but the one before, it's like literally the whole thing sounds like one song. It's like all the same song. So this is not that. It sounded like he worked on just 10 very individual songs, and they're all different in different genres. And he expressed a lot of different emotions, and he said that he has a lot of collabs. Like, I don't know if that was like intentional or if it's just like, you just happen to be working on a song and it's like, oh, you know what, so-and-so's voice would really work for this part, and then he just calls them up. And of course, like, no matter who he calls up, they're going to be like, oh, okay, I'll be right there. Like, yes, I would like to be on RM of BTS's album, of course. So I bet you anything, like anybody he asked, they did it. So, and apparently some of the singers are like very big names in Korea, which I don't know who they are, but they are like, people from Korea and like the rock world, or like they have, other kinds of music. Like obviously I would know them if it was like K-pop singers, but they're from other genres. And he was talking about, not necessarily trying to chart the songs or like care about that as much, because this is about expressing yourself as a solo artist. And he also wants songs to have a long-lasting effect. Like, okay, yes, that is great when BTS songs are like number one on Billboard and all that, but he would like to, have songs that are meaningful to people, and it's added to someone's playlist because the song really speaks to them. Like, that's what he's going for. And he also said a lot of his songs aren't optimal for streaming, because they tell you to have shorter songs for streaming, because then you can play a song more times, which makes sense. But, that's not always going to match up with a song that you want to write. Like, your song is your song. It's not going to be like, oh, let me cut it like right in the middle of a sentence, and that way it's only like 2 minutes and 20 seconds. It's like that doesn't always work when you're writing a song. So I think that's great that he is more focused on like what am I trying to say and what kind of a song do I want it to sound like, instead of let me make sure this is like packaged commercially, which I'm not saying like, oh, BTS, that's all they care about, but they have to look at that more because they're a group and they're in a certain genre and they have to try to be commercially successful. So I think he's trying to do something different with his solo album. And then he was talking about what made RM who he is today. And he was saying accidental acquaintances and fate or coincidences that all came together to become a meaningful, organic thing. And he's saying most of the objects around us are dead. They're just, a piece of wood or plastic or computer, just objects are dead. And it's like you got to focus on the things that are alive, and that there's very little of that that's actually alive. It's like, other people and ideas. So I was like, oh wow, this really makes you think, this album. They both agreed, RM and Suga, that it's important to be a fan of something. And this is, because you have to be passionate about something for you to care about anything in life. And that's how you have meaning, is like you love things, you're living with love, and you are surrounding yourself with that. So, and then he was talking about how his dream in music started, and it was in 2006 when he became a fan of rap, and he was like a big fan of Epic High, and he remembers the moment his mom gave him a microphone, like, in a box, and then that was what he's going to use to rap. And then he thinks of rap as poetry with rhythm. And so it's great that he has that very early memory of when he started getting into music. So I think that it all goes back to the beginning of something, And then they were talking about February 25th, 2020 versus some day in 2025. And I was like, okay, what happened in 2020? I was like, that's when COVID started, but I guess that day they were doing a specific music show and they found out that it got canceled. And it's like, oh, that never happens. Why would it be canceled? And then they started hearing about all the other parts of their schedule was getting canceled. And it's like, wow, this is a huge deal, because like nothing ever gets canceled if you're in K-pop, unless it's very serious. That's when they realized, okay, this is going to make a huge impact on our lives, our careers. COVID, it kind of brought a dark time to the world, and it was like upsetting because they'd prepared so much for that album coming out, and all the effort, it was like gone to waste. And you go through all of the emotions of that, and I think probably some of these songs came out of that time period. And they finally did perform on 2 years later in front of an audience, finally. And so I guess that February 25th, 2020 is a day that like all the members of BTS remember really well. And then they were talking about compare that to a day in 2025. And of course, 2025, we know that's when BTS is planning to get back together and when everyone will be done with the military. And that's what they're looking forward to. And it definitely sounds like they are looking forward to that. They want to be together as a group after all this is done. And it's also going to be the 10th anniversary of The Most Beautiful Thing in Life, or HYYH as it's known as. And so I thought that's good, that leave things on a positive note. We can look forward to that. And then they talked about, I guess for his show, Suga picks a song that is appropriate for the episode. And he said he chose the song Let It Be. And he thinks like the lyrics of that resonate really well for people as adults. Sometimes it's best to let it be because you can't control everything. And it's hard to know as an adult, like, how do you define that? And what does that mean? And they're saying like, okay, an adult is someone with self-reflection, someone who thinks about how they can be in the world. So I was like, wow, okay, it really makes you think. So I thought that was a good first episode for Suga's show, and it had some good conversation. So RM released Indigo on December 2nd, and it's been described as an archive of the final years of RM's 20s. And this is his debut studio album. And Mono is considered a mixtape, so that's from 2018. And so this is 4 years later, wow, that he released this solo album. And it has 10 tracks. It features appearances by, a number of other artists, which I thought was like, I don't know if surprising, but I didn't think he would want to use so many collabs, but I guess he felt that they would add to what he was saying with each song. Of course, Indigo captures his thoughts and worries and emotions, and you could tell that he experienced a lot of things and then wrote those into songs. Some songwriters are like that, where they take from their personal experiences and then write that into songs, versus like other songwriters, they just write about general things or, fictional stories that they've had. So I think this is definitely the first kind of songwriting is now that we know, everything that he's gone through with BTS and struggling during COVID and, all the emotions that were felt, that this is that kind of an album where it's just personal. And I really liked the whole album overall. It had a lot of singer-songwriter vibes and not too much rap. I was surprised that there wasn't more rap. And like if you listen to this album, I don't know if you would guess that he's a rapper, because if this is all you heard, because he doesn't have that much rap in the songs. So like there isn't even a song that's like totally, all rap, like some of his solo songs were in BTS. So I wonder why he did that. If it was because, okay, that isn't how I wanted this song to go, having a rap in it, or did he feel like he only has to rap in BTS and he was kind of like put in that box? So I don't know. That's I guess that's something we'll have to speculate about. But he has some really good vocals. I know it's like sometimes a running joke, like where he sings like off key, like just to be funny, but he actually can sing really well. And it's like, you don't need to have like the most range ever to be a good singer. It's just like, do you have a nice tone? Do you have a nice voice? Can you stay on key with the notes that you can reach? You don't have to have like, oh, I can do really high notes, really low notes. But yeah, I was surprised how much singing was on the album and also how upbeat the songs were, because I don't know why, but I expected like more rap and like more slow songs, because he was saying, I don't know, I just got the impression there would be like a lot of sad songs because of, when you say an album is emotional and it's about some tough situations, you expect there to be depressing, but I don't think it really sounded depressing. I thought it was just very singer-songwriter, very thoughtful, and I don't think you have to be in any particular mood to listen to it. You know how there's some albums where it's like, oh, I only want to listen to this if I'm like in a sad mood already. It's not that kind of an album. So I think you can be in any mood and listen to Indigo. And it's also a song with a lot of powerful messages. And of course, we know his talent as a songwriter. So it's going to have some really good lyrics and some good wordplay and gives you things to think about. So I think, I don't know if I've listened to the album enough to have like, oh, this one's my favorite song. But, there were songs that stood out. And I'm still trying to get everything differentiated. The first song, Yoon, featuring Erykah Badu, this one is kind of like a jazzy, chill song, and I think it helps that her voice is on it because that makes it very relaxing. And I guess this song is about, or it's named after a Korean artist named Yoon Hyun Kyun. This artist is known for large-scale abstract paintings that combine smearing effects of umber and ultramarine blue, also known as indigo, on linen canvas. And it's reminiscent of traditional ink wash paintings. And I guess this is one of RM's longtime favorite artists. And I think he said that this Yoon's works comfort him when he's feeling down. And I think he even owns some of this art. And there's one part of the song where he's making reference to be a human before an artist. So I think that part of it like really resonated with him. And I think that's something that Yoon said before. But I think, yeah, he really identifies with that. Like, you can't just be an artist and like churn stuff out. You have to experience things as a human first. And I think this is a very good song to start off the album with. And the second song, Still Life, features Anderson .Paak. And I like the beat and the vibe of this one. And I like the use of still life in the lyrics. And usually that means a painting of objects that are still, like, you know, oh, here's a bowl of fruit. Like, that's a still life. But I think he means it to say, I'm still living, I'm still moving, and I'm still, you know, going forward. So it's a very positive song and an upbeat song, and I like that it has like a little bit of the R&B flavor to it. And then All Day featuring Tableau. This is another artist he admires. I think he's in Epic High. I'm not like an Epic High expert or anything, but I think Tableau is in that group. And he wanted to do a song for 4 years together. And this song seems to be about finding your own color and voice and not necessarily following the algorithm or following trends. And I think it's a good song too. And Forgetful featuring Kim Sewol. This one I've heard is one of the songs he wrote first, or maybe the first song written for this album. It's very acoustic. It's very chill. Like, I could picture someone playing a guitar while singing it. It seems like a little bit, I don't want to say Ed Sheeran, but kind of like that. Just like a very low-key song. And let's see, another song is Change Part 2, which is, he had a song called Change before, so I think that's why he called this one Change Part 2. But this one has a lot of lyrics that people are gonna leave open to interpretation, because it's like, who is he talking about? He's like, the lyrics, it says things change, people change, everything change. And then one verse, it says, I can't believe I loved you once. Fool me once, then fool me twice. Shame on you. Yeah, shame on me. And it's like, chemistry we had for sure. Gradually we wanted more. They say you can't fix someone. Seems you got one fit you right. And so it's like, oh, okay, is this about a relationship? Is this about a romance that didn't work out? So it's like, oh, this is very interesting. And I think that's cool that they're kind of like, BTS is finally like stepping their foot out there as far as talking about, you know, possibly being about a song about a personal relationship and things that they've experienced, because I think that is how you're going to be authentic. That's what, you know, all the big songwriters do, is talk about things that they are going through. So I think it'd be interesting to see how fans receive that. It's like, okay, who's this girl and who did this, you know? And then in another verse, it says, fuck my interviews in years ago. I'm whole different, not that anymore. Fuck that wiki. Fuck all those infos. What a stranger. I don't know this fool. So I think that part of it is like, I think that's like frustration about his image and how people portray him in the media sometimes, or people misinterpreting things he said in old interviews, or people like bringing up old stuff just to like try to bash BTS. And we've seen that happen many times. Like, the press will take something out of context, or they'll exaggerate that something is offensive when it's really not. And I'm sure it's like frustrating for them, because like, once you've said something or once there's footage of it, it's like on the internet forever. And I think that's like such a hard thing to deal with when you're a famous person, and it's like something that you don't want out there anymore. There's like nothing you can do about it. So I think, yeah, Change Part 2 is a very interesting song. And I think people will try to figure out what this is about. What is he talking about? And then the song "Lonely," I read somewhere that he said he wrote this while he was in Las Vegas in April 2022. So the Permission to Dance Las Vegas tour, I was like, oh wow, he wrote that while he was there, while I was in the same town. So that's pretty cool. Like, that feels very recent for him to have written a song for this. And I guess he's writing, the song is about being lonely. And so it must be that, they got there to Vegas. They had to come, well before the concerts to prepare. And so you're in a hotel for a lot of the time. So I think you have a lot of time to yourself. And I guess it's like frustrating enough that he wrote a song about that and like what he was feeling with that and trying to show his vulnerability. So I thought, okay, that's very interesting, to the history of behind the scenes of that song. And Wildflower, that one is the title track of it. And this one has an MV, and also Still Life has an MV, which he made two. I guess same as J-Hope. It had two MVs that came out of this. And Wildflower, I think that song has more of the overall message that he's trying to portray with this album, about struggling between being famous and being an artist, and then trying to stay true to who you are. And you could definitely tell that he's using a lot of like really poetic imagery and, flowers compared to fireworks. And, I think we can see from the MV like what he's trying to say with that. How it's totally fine to be like one wildflower out of many. Sometimes you have to step back and just be like a regular person and like experience regular things. And I don't know if that's the interpretation, but people can take a lot away from the songs that he's written, and so you can take your own spin on it. But I think, yeah, he's just trying to have a commentary about those kind of themes, and I think it's a pretty good song. Yeah, he said this is another song that he had started in 2019, and it has a vocalist who's from a South Korean rock band on it, who's very well known in Korea. And I like all of the songs pretty much. I don't have like comments on every single one of them, but I think they all work together really well. You could tell what the theme is, and how, even though he said it's like, wow, 10 songs in like all different genres, I feel like they all fit together pretty well. And he has it in a certain order. I'm guessing it's more like a chronological order, or maybe not, because the Wildflower, he has it towards the end. But I think they all have the themes in mind for the album, and so I think it all works together really well. So just to sum up Indigo, I like that the songs were serious, but it's not a sad sounding album. It's not depressing. The whole album is more uplifting. And even though it has multiple genres, it has rock, pop, hip hop, funk, singer-songwriter. I don't know if that counts as a category, but it doesn't feel disjointed. It feels like all the songs go well together. And I have a quote here. He says, "My hope is that people will feel comfortable and true to themselves while listening to the album. If this album or any of the songs within could give them a brief moment to think about their own lives and be happy, I would be very grateful." And I think that's like as much as you can ask for as an artist, is if people listen to your songs and then they think of that in relation to their own life. So I think it's definitely very successful, and it doesn't really matter like what numbers it gets, as long as you reach people, as long as you touch people. I think that's why he's so involved in art, and that's why he visits all these museums and everything. It's like the same thing. He's trying to have that effect on people. Like when you look at a painting and you feel this certain strong emotion, same thing for listening to music, and you relate that to something that's going on with you. And I think the things we know RM for. It's like, oh, he's really into art and he's loves nature and like riding his bike and writing songs. And I think he definitely expressed all of that. Everything that we know him for is in this album. Like he's using nature a lot, especially in the videos. Like he's in the Wildflowers video. He's in like a field outside, like a really, really pretty field, and experiencing fireworks outside. And I think nature is a really good way to show emotion. Like it can show you peacefulness, it can show stress, it can show volatility. Like just think about like a storm. It's like, oh, that's an emotion. And it's also an album that has a lot of really good lyrics. So I think this is something where you'll probably want to look up what the lyrics are, just to see, what are the translated parts that are in Korean, what is he saying there. And I think I think overall he did a really good job. And I wasn't sure if I would like his album because I don't remember having any like strong feelings towards Mono, which I haven't listened to it that many times, but I was just like, oh, okay, it's fine. But I think he did a really great job with Indigo, and it's songs that can be in a playlist. It doesn't have to be like separate, like, oh, this doesn't go with other, K-pop or other BTS songs. So I think even though he was like, oh, I'm not trying to make it commercial, I do think these songs go with other songs just fine. But also at the same time, like expressing what he wants to express. So I think he has a very good balance of ideas plus, songs that sound good. And you can't just totally ignore one or the other, And in a way, I wanted to compare Indigo to Taylor Swift albums. Like it's kind of a cross between Reputation and Midnights, because Reputation, Taylor Swift has a lot of anger about all the stuff going on in her life, like her company, those issues, and Kanye West, all that stuff. And so some of her songs have a lot of anger and a lot of like experiencing negative emotions. And Midnights is also similar, not as much anger, but it's more like I'm stressed, I'm worried about this or that, and it's like a song that's about emotions. So I think he's recorded Indigo, and it's definitely an artist album. It's something that's personal. So I think everybody can find a song that they identify with, and especially, with all the messages that he has in there. So I think he did a really great job, and it feels very authentic. You can listen to BTS Happy Hour on Samsung Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and other podcast platforms, or visit btshappyhour.com. If you like the show, please take a moment to rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Weverse. Check out the merch store with BTS-themed tees, hoodies, and more, linked in the description, as well as on the BTS Happy Hour Facebook page. Until next time, this has been the BTS Happy Hour. Thanks for listening, and remember, make every hour a happy one.